I'm going to show you how my first time driving a truck through a city went. But unfortunately, since we weren't allowed to have cell phones while practicing driving for obvious reasons, as a stand-in, I'm going to have to use these diagrams I drew of the intersections and other types of streets I drove down, and as a stand-in of the truck I was driving, I'll have to use this model of a day cab, even though I wasn't driving a day cab. I was driving one that had a sleeper. And I also wasn't pulling a trailer with a container. It was actually one of those, I forget what they're called, but they're rectangular and they have a door on the end. Now, one thing I hate about driving a truck through the city is the lanes are very narrow and you have very little clearance. I mean, one slightly wrong movement of the steering wheel, and the next thing you know, you've hit someone's car. So you have to be extra careful on these types of streets. Another thing you have to look for is people that jump into the intersection without waiting their turn because they're too much in a hurry and don't want to get stuck behind the truck. That's something you have to deal with a lot, especially in the city. And then you have to worry about idiots that get out of their car without checking their mirrors first, that insist on wearing the darkest colors in the world at night and for some reason think I can see them with my headlights, but I can't because it's too dark. I mean, some people have like black coats on and they somehow expect me to see them. I hate when people do that. Anyway, one problem I had when driving in the city is this. Now, I'm driving through an intersection that looks pretty much like this, and I just checked this intersection over here to make sure it was safe, and then I checked my left mirror to make sure the truck was properly positioned so that it wouldn't go over the lane, and then I checked my right mirror to make sure the trailer was positioned so it wouldn't hit any parked cars. And 2 seconds have passed and my instructor says, "Look out," and points at this intersection. What happened was, a car that was stopped at a stop sign, he was basically inching his way forward like this, like some people like to do, blocking the entire lane. And I didn't have time to stop for him. So I did the only thing I was able to do. This is an emergency maneuver I'm very familiar with my car because I'm always ending up having to do this for some reason. What I did was I drove into the oncoming lane like this and drove around this car and then back into the right lane. I had to do this a lot with my car because people keep inching their way into the intersection and blocking the lane and not... I don't know. I have no idea why they would do this. And another problem I have when I'm driving in my car is someone's driving down the street and then they make a right turn without using their turn signal and make a sudden stop, and I end up having to go around them like this to avoid hitting them. I don't understand. What is the big problem with just using your turn signals? Anyway, now let's talk about intersections. I really don't like driving across intersections in a truck, and the reason why is because trucks have manual transmissions. I've never driven a manual transmission in my life before driving a truck, so it's really difficult for me to figure out. I'm really good at shifting up. The problems I have is starting from an intersection and slowing down for one, and the reason why is because every other time I try to shift down while slowing down for an intersection, it won't let me get into the gear I want, and then it locks, and then I'm stuck in neutral. And the only thing I can do is just coast to a stop with my foot on the brake. And my instructor tells me I'm not really supposed to do that, and if I did that during the test, they would fail me for that. So that's definitely something I have to work on. I don't understand why it won't let me just shift into the gear though. Why does it have to be so stubborn and just lock itself like that? And get me stuck in neutral. Anyway, another problem I have is pulling out from an intersection. And the reason for that is, another thing I'm not familiar with manual transmissions is when you start the vehicle, your foot cannot be on the brake or it'll stall. This is something I'm not used to, obviously, because in automatic transmissions, you just let go of the brake and step in the accelerator and there's no problem. But every other time I try to pull away from the intersection, the engine stalls, and I realize, oh, I forgot to take my foot off the brake. But sometimes it stalls even if I let go of the brake first, and I still have no idea why it does that. And one thing I really hate about the engine stalling is when it does, you have to start the vehicle back up and then go through the procedures of moving it all over again. And while you're doing that, people are driving past you like this, even though it's a double solid yellow line and you're not allowed to pass like that because they're just too impatient. So, needless to say, I did not enjoy driving a truck through a city. However, I really enjoyed driving one on the highway, and later I'll make a video explaining how that went.